You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King with a special focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about all things that serve the King. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm your host, the aforementioned Matt. I'm one of your hosts, the aforementioned Matt Hurt, and with me today, as usual, is Tiny. Hi, Tiny.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
I am quarantined.
Same here. Yes, we are recording. We usually record these in the same room, but we are practicing our social distancing like good little boys and girls. We're both boys. But yeah. Yeah, so but yeah, we're doing our part to flatten the curve and everything. And yeah, so we're recording remotely. And how are you doing with the whole quarantine and everything? I know you're still out and about in terms of your job. Do you have any symptoms? Any problems encountered with like the world?
No, I had no symptoms for me. Still going out and working, and I had to go to my first medical facility though to perform some work.
Terrifying.
Yeah, but I was lucky because I only was in like a maintenance area. Like I was basically in the boiler room the whole time.
Okay.
So I wasn't like walking the halls, and it was also in a very rural area. They had only had like a handful of cases, and I think the guy told me they don't have an active case in the hospital while I was there. So
okay, nice.
if I had to get sent to a hospital, like that was kind of the best place to go to.
Right.
Yeah, but I also so there's a location I go to every week, and it's a food production place.
Okay.
So they're very, very careful about screening people, and it's a very, very clean location in general, which it's actually very inspiring.
Nice.
To see the lengths they go to produce a clean product. So they screen people when you come in. They take your temperature. You have to wear a mask that they give you, and like they hired like nurses to be at the main entrance. I mean, like they're taking it very seriously, and so I was at this location and I had my laptop open. I was looking at their server, doing my thing, updating stuff. And this dude walked in and like they ask you these questions like, "Are you showing any symptoms?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, the guy was like, okay. Have you been exposed to anyone who you know was confirmed to have it?" And he was like, "I'm not really sure if they were confirmed, but yeah, I think so." And the guy was like, Why did you come into work today, sir? And, yeah, and he was like, "I don't know, I got to work, man. I got to make that money." And he got sent home. Like, it's like, dude, you didn't even get. Why would you do that? Like, I don't understand why you'd even come to work.
Good God.
Yeah, he wasn't like coughing all over the place or anything, and yeah, he seemed a little under the weather, but nothing insane.
But it's still like that. Just makes my blood boil a little bit. Like, I understand. I am not someone who I'm very fortunate in that I still have my full-time job and everything, and I can do it from home and everything. But like, just the thought, like, first of all, if you're going to a job where you're working with food product and everything of any kind, like, be much more vigilant than that guy.
Right.
Like, God, I don't understand the collective assumption that risking your health isn't risking everyone else's. Like, there seems to be this cognitive dissonance with people that it's just like, well, I don't care if I get sick, or I'm above it because I'm me and I've been alive my entire life, so I don't care if I get it because I won't die because I'm invincible. But it's like, you know, you'll infect other people. Like, it's spreading.
Yeah, that's an aspect or a characteristic of this crisis that a lot of people just have never grasped.
Yeah. Yep.
And that guy included, apparently. So,
wow. Well, Hope he gets better at not going to work.
Yeah.
Wow. My job just announced that they are going to have bandanas for us for when we come into the office. So that'll be nice. Because I have to go in once a week.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. What else about that? There was a really good kind of transitioning over to our King news and stuff. Do you have any check-ins, by the way?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we can talk about The Stand.
Okay.
I finished book 2 of The Stand. I had to go to the hospital I went to was in Illinois, so 2.5 hour drive each way. So that was a lot, and I did that. I went out there twice in 2 weeks, so that's like 10 hours. Nice. So I kind of breezed through book 2 of The Stand.
That's awesome.
And that's where I'm at with that. Listen through. I'm kind of catching up on podcasting now as far as listening to stuff. So
nice. That's great. I just started book 2 today. Because peek behind the curtain, we've recorded our book 1 review of The Stand. We're covering The Stand in 3 sections, three like sections of the book, one episode of the podcast per section. I've already recorded the first one, and now we're working on the second one, and that's going to be posted closer to when the miniseries is going to come out later this year. Hopefully, it's still coming out later this year. I have the hiccups. I don't know if anyone could understand that, but But yeah, so I finished, I started book 2 today, and then do you mind if I go into my check-ins?
Go for it.
Okay, cool. So, I listened to End of Watch, for the first time.
Nice.
The concluding chapter of the Bill Hodges trilogy. I am just insane in my head. I've been wanting to watch The Outsider, but I've been wanting to re-listen to the Outsider novel before that, and I've wanted to finish the Bill Hodges trilogy before I re-listen to The Outsider, because The Outsider ties into the Bill Hodges trilogy. So I finally listened to End of Watch. Honestly, it might be my favorite of the 3. Yeah, really, really dug it. Just the kind of return to Stephen King-isms in it. Like, it's like the first 2 books in the trilogy were pretty straightforward, kind of not hard-boiled, but like detective novels and kind of in that genre. But End of Watch kind of goes into more of the things that Stephen King is more comfortable with. And I found that really enticing and interesting. And yeah, I think that after 2 books, going into this 3rd book, I feel like King was much more comfortable writing these characters in this world, in this genre. So I think it really worked out pretty well.
Nice.
Yeah, and eventually we'll cover them on the podcast. I was trying to figure out how we could do that. I was thinking about doing just a one-off, because we've recorded a Mr. Mercedes episode, but that's like 2 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. I was thinking about just doing like a trilogy episode and then The Outsider and The Outsider, but I don't know. We'll talk off mic about all that. Because we still have Castle Rock to go through.
Oh, God.
Yep. Which, by the way, if we want to start watching Castle Rock, we can start watching Castle Rock.
For real.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the check-in I have. I also started Joe Hill's Nosferatu. Only got a couple chapters into it, but pretty interesting stuff. I'm looking forward to reading more of that. Yeah, and that'll do it for check-ins, I think. By the way, on this episode of the podcast, we're going to be reviewing Dr. Sleep, Mike Flanagan's 2019 adaptation of Stephen King's novel, also sequel to Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. So stay tuned for that later in this episode. But first, we have some news items to go through, Tiny.
Okay.
Are you excited for Stephen King news?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Always.
Good. I was going to be a total dick and just be like, so what news do you have for us tonight? Just throw you to the wolves of the Kala.
For real.
So, Stephen King and John Grisham had a webinar, live chat thing yesterday, Wednesday at 7 p.m. online. It is available on Stephen King's YouTube channel. I haven't watched it yet, but the event was free, but the authors hope attendees will consider making a donation to Bink, the Bookseller Industry Charitable Foundation. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Yeah, so it's just a conversation with John Grisham and Stephen King. Gonna check it out at some point.
Okay.
Next news item is Stephen King, before the release of If It Bleeds, which is currently out, he posted a video on the Simon & Schuster YouTube channel that is him reading the first chapter of If It Bleeds. And it is a delight. Did you see this at all, Tiny?
No, I haven't heard about it.
Okay, it is. It's awesome because he. I'm playing now. I'll put a link in the show notes. Of course, it's an 8-minute video. It starts out with him in a living room area. He's got I don't know what kind of shirt that. Oh, he has a shirt that says lover, the way that it has the V over loser.
Okay.
From it. But he's wearing a mask, a medical mask, and everything. And it's just he's just sitting on a love seat reading from If It Bleeds. So check that out. Pretty cool. Yeah, and If It Bleeds is out. I haven't read any of it yet, but have you procured a copy of it?
I haven't. Amidst all the COVID crisis, we have kind of been watching our spending just because, not kind of leery of how everything's going to go. And so I actually canceled my subscription to Audible for the time. But I think I'm just going to go ahead and reactivate it because, I think we're going to be okay. But it's only $15 a month. So I think I'm going to reactivate that in the next week or two. And that's going to be my first purchase with my new credit.
Sweet. Yeah, I am looking forward to getting to it eventually. We'll cover it. I would go ahead and say, and this is a very loose commitment thing, I would say we'll probably cover it the beginning of June on the podcast.
Okay. Cool.
Don't hold me to that, but that is the kind of idea that I have in my head. But that's not to say we're not going to have content, because we have this episode, and then next week on the podcast we're going to have an episode with Mike. He and I talked about 11/22/63, so enjoy that next week. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all the news that I have. Okay. Oh, the last piece of news actually is there was a really great interview with Stephen King by Anthony Bresnikan over at Vanity Fair, and he talks about Trump and about isolation, quarantine, all that stuff. Really great interview, and I highly recommend checking it out. I'll put a link in the show notes. I tweeted it out and everything. Anthony Bresnikan, he worked for EW for a long time, and now he's at Vanity Fair. Dude, he was he was the guy who championed for the Entertainment Weekly cover of the Dark Tower movie. He got that done. He got that
sweet.
The actual movie notwithstanding, but he was instrumental in getting coverage for the Dark Tower on Entertainment Weekly, which is so great. And I tweeted about this, and he responded to it, and he was like, I really appreciate it. But he was I just said he's one of my favorite people that writes about King. He's nice. Really good at it. So check it out. Link in the show notes. And anything else before we get into Dr. Sleep?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, cool. Well, we are going to go into our review of Dr. Sleep from 2019, the movie by director Mike Flanagan. We're going to go into a non-spoiler review, and then we will prompt you when we go into a spoiler review. So we're going to go into non-spoilers for Dr. Sleep, written and directed by Mike Flanagan. Okay, so Tiny. I'm going to read the plot summary, courtesy of IMDb, real quick. Years following the events of The Shining, a now adult Dan Torrance must protect a young girl with similar powers from a cult known as the True Knot, who prey on children with powers to remain immortal. So this movie came out. Where's the release date?
November?
Yes, November 8th, 2019 in theaters. You guys remember what those are. So stars Ewan McGregor as Dan Torrance, Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat, Kylie Curran as Abra Stone, and Cliff Curtis as Billy Freeman. So Tiny. This was very, very high on your top 10 list over at obsessiveviewer.com when we did our year in review episode. How do you feel about Dr. Sleep and non-spoilers, and how did you feel about the movie?
Well, to make a big, bold statement right out of the bat, I think it was better than the book.
Nice.
Which is not something that is said in general very often. I actually was so excited for the movie. I don't know that I ever mentioned it on this podcast, but on Obsessive Viewer, I think I talked about it in our end of the year episode. I was so excited to see it that I was actually out of town doing training for my job. Right. I was down in Louisville, and I actually went and got tickets at a local theater down there and went and saw it like opening night because I was so excited to see it. Yeah, and I did not disappoint. I had trouble going to sleep. I was so excited about the movie. I absolutely adore what Mike Flanagan did. There are with this movie, Mike Flanagan has moved into my A-list of directors that I am just beyond excited about no matter what they're doing. He is up there with someone like, Denis Villeneuve, wow. Alex Garland. After this year, he just had it was such a great year at the Oscars, and it's such a great year for film. The fact that he stood out so much, speaks volumes to how good of a director he is. And it's so interesting because I'm not a horror guy. Like I enjoy the genre to an extent, but there's several other genres that I sort of prefer in place of horror. And that's really what he's known for.
Yeah, I agree. I just love that I'm not a horror fan. Tiny, co-host of Tower Junkies, a Stephen King podcast.
Well, you all the time, Matt, you talk about how Stephen King is not just a horror writer, and he's true. Almost kind of, mistypecast in that way. So fuck you.
That's fair.
No, but yeah, it's Mike Flanagan. I just absolutely love the guy. I love what he does. I just get him. I think he gets me. We should be friends.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So I think the way that Mike Flanagan took this book, and he took the Shining book, and he took Stanley Kubrick's The Shining and blended them into this, truly took them and put them in a blender and made them his own. And he was so loyal and so true to both Stephen King's vision and Stanley Kubrick's vision and his own that I think he has surpassed both of them with what he did. I really think that. I think he did. Interesting. I think, like I said, I think this movie was better than the book, and I think he even surpassed Stanley Kubrick's vision.
Wow.
With The Shining, because he was able to stay true to the characters, which Stanley Kubrick failed at, and I don't think he really cared, and most people don't care. But it is unbelievable what he achieved with this movie, and I think it's unfortunate because only true fans of both books and Stanley Kubrick's movie will really comprehend how much of an achievement this movie was.
It's a magic trick. It is. Yes. It is completely a magic trick, and it's something that is so special in terms of just the movie medium. It's just the achievement is incredible. It is. Overall, it is a great, fantastic movie. It was pretty high on my top 10 list as well. It was your number 2 or number
3.
Number 3. Okay. What was your number 1?
1917.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is transcendent in the way that it melds two different iterations of a single intellectual property while also honoring the published sequel of the original. Like I said, it's a magic trick. It is something that is hard to define and articulate, which is terrible for a podcast, but it reminds me kind of a little bit, but in a more complex way, of the feeling I got when I saw Split in theaters and the ending of Split. Like, that was another magic trick, the reveal at the end of Split. But this is a different beast, because it is playing with, like, it is like we're inside this intricate, like, clock, and all of these gears are turning, and they're working together in a very specific way, but like the pieces are different from each other. It's like it's so, like, mind-boggling how it fits together so well, because, like, all of these pieces are from different things, and they come together and they make this one, like, premium kind of prime thing that is in itself a really good, well done creation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got really worried that analogy was going to run away from me. But I do want to say real quick before we progress with the review and get too deep in it, I do want to mention that our friends over at Horror Movie Yearbook reviewed the movie in February. They did a great job. Check it out over at Horror Movie Yearbook. I think it's horrormovieyearbook.com. Yeah, so check that out. They give us shout outs quite a bit, and I highly appreciate it and very much appreciate it. They're great guys. They know a shit ton more about horror than I do, or you do, Tiny, if you don't mind me saying.
Not at all.
Check it out. But yeah, so also it's worth noting that we're not going to be talking about the director's cut, because I kind of have something a little special planned for a little bit later in the year regarding the director's cut. Also, I haven't seen the director's cut yet. Because I wanted,
me either.
Yeah, because I wanted us to review the theatrical cut. But anyway, they do over at Horror Movie Yearbook. They do go into the differences between the director's cut and the theatrical cut. So check that out after you check out this review. So yes, so Tiny. Magic aside, how did you feel going into it? How did you feel about the casting and the performances, and just on the technical level, how did you feel about Dr. Sleep?
Well, I was. I mean, it was highly anticipated. My expectations were, I mean, they were, I don't know about as high as it gets, but they were really high. I mean, there have only been a couple times, I think, in my lifetime where I've anticipated movies more. Incidentally, one of them's coming up with Dune, Denis Villeneuve's Dune at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. High expectations, I did a Dark Tower. Expectations through the roof. Well, I don't know about through the roof, but like just excitement for a movie, right? Being excited for something. This was up there with those. So, what else did you ask besides
the casting and everything? But before you get to that, I do want to mention that it was a bummer that we couldn't see it in theaters together. I had such a weird relationship with seeing this in the theater too, because like you were out of town, but also there was an advanced screening that I had like passes to go to, and like I think you were out of town for that, and Kirsten wasn't available, and like I left with plenty of time. Like, I left my apartment to go to that screening with like 45 minutes before it started, and I hit like bumper to bumper traffic. I was trapped on the interstate, and like I was so stressed out. Like I was like I got like damn near to the theater, and I was like, the movie started 5 minutes ago. I'm like, I just can't. Like, first of all, they probably wouldn't let me in, but also like I'm not going to do that. Like, and everything. Yeah. So like I missed out on the advanced screening, and then I saw it in the theater by myself, like the opening weekend, and like again, like I said, it was just a kind of transcendent experience. Like I was just grinning ear to ear, like during multiple parts throughout it. Just like all the Easter eggs and stuff. It was like, God, Mike Flanagan, he gets it. Like he gets how to make an incredible film, and also he gets what it means to be a Stephen King fan. Yes, presents it in a way that isn't like pandering to pandering to the fan base or anything. It's like it's born, like his references and admiration and love for the Stephen King fandom and Stephen King's work is from a place of a Stephen King fan, and you can really tell it throughout both this movie and Gerald's Game. Which we neglected to mention that he previously adapted as well.
Right.
But yeah, just between Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep, like you said, he has catapulted himself, for me, to being like one of the, like, he's like a preeminent, like, Stephen King adaptation person. Like, he is like up there with like Frank Darabont in terms of like creating an incredible Stephen King adaptation, and like someone that I would trust with any Stephen King property, including The Dark Tower.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And he can do it with television too, because House on Haunted Hill, or The Haunting of Hill House.
Yeah. I still haven't seen.
Dude, you've got to watch it. It's so fucking good.
I know. I will soon, I think. Yeah, I will soon. Whenever
you watch it, I'll rewatch it with you.
Nice.
I've been wanting to watch it again.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet. So maybe we can do an Obsessive Viewer episode with Mike about it.
Okay.
Maybe. We'll see. Yeah.
All right.
So Dr. Sleep. So how was your experience seeing it? Well, let's talk about the movie.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the casting and the performances? Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, who on a previous episode of the podcast, I mentioned, I got her confused with Rebecca Hall. So if you've been waiting for me to call attention to my stupidity, here I am. Rebecca Ferguson and the young actress who plays Abra that I turned the page off for.
Yeah, Kylie Curran.
Yeah, Kylie Curran. How did you feel about those performances?
So the casting, I was fine with it. Ewan McGregor is a great actor. Been a fan of his forever, and I never had, even when I was watching or reading the book, I didn't have a clear picture of what Dan Torrance looked like. And I think it had been announced already that Ewan McGregor was playing him, so I think that's who I envisioned basically. Okay. So he was great, and he did a great job. He's never not good, you know. He's always fun to watch. But pretty much the rest of the cast are either like kind of B-list actors or they're kind of character actors. Yeah. Like Cliff Curtis has been in huge, big ass movies, but he's that guy. He's a character actor, and I know his name and all that, but like he's not necessarily someone you get excited about, which is the definition of a character actor. So I'm not trying to talk shit about him. Right. Like, he's fantastic. He was great in this. He's great in everything. He's played like 25 different ethnicities because he's such a cool guy. He just doesn't fit into a box. So that's what I love about Cliff Curtis. He can do anything. Like, he's so dynamic.
That's it. I didn't know that he's from New Zealand.
Oh, I forgot about that. I thought he was American. I didn't even see. He's a chameleon. You don't know.
Oh yeah.
He's like the Kiwi Gary Oldman.
Right, yeah. Would be remiss if I didn't bring up Sunshine.
Yes.
God, love that movie, and he's great in it.
Absolutely. But I think of the other four main characters, the Kylie Curran, she was great. I loved her performance. She especially, one of my favorite parts about Abra, the character, is the fact that she has the Torrance temper. That was most famously showcased by Jack Nicholson in the movie, but is also present in the book, obviously, with Jack Torrance's father, and I think Dan Torrance has it, to an extent. They're kind of temperamental folks, and and she did a great job with it. That's hard. That's got to be hard for something to, as a 13, 14-year-old kid, to tap into that kind of aggression and just put in a great performance. And that was one of my favorite parts of her performance. She pulled that off really well. And then to round it out, Rebecca Ferguson, I had seen her before. I can't even remember what I've really seen her in, but I was really excited for this because this is a tough role. This is a very kind of evil. She is an evil being person that you still sympathize with, which we talked about in the book review.
Absolutely.
On here, the True Knot was somewhat sympathetic because there's the survival aspect to them, and she really, really nailed it. I mean, she was scary. There are some scenes in particular that I'll reference, and she was creepy. She's in the book, she's described by some people as being absolutely beautiful and stunning and gorgeous, and she fit that bill for sure. Yes. She's a very pretty lady. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed her performance, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but it makes me super excited for Dune because she plays a major role in Dune. So yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, the casting was great, and everybody else did a great job too. Bruce Greenwood, who I hope becomes a regular of Mike Flanagan's.
Me too. That dude, I love Bruce Greenwood.
Me too. He's so good.
He's amazing. Yeah, I agree with everything. The performances and the casting were just phenomenal. Like the casting in for the beginning scenes with young Danny and Wendy, there's a lot of praise at the actress that plays Wendy in it, Alex Esso, which, like, at the beginning, like, it was like, okay, I mean, it's not Shelley Duvall, obviously, but like the commitment to the Shelley Duvall-ness of it, in Alex Esso's performance is like the moment where she runs up to Danny after Danny is speaking to Dick at the beginning of the movie. I was like, holy that is Wendy Torrance. That's Kubrick's Wendy Torrance, like from the Kubrick movie.
Right.
It was surreal. It was really cool. And like I saw people talking about the use of recasting in this movie as opposed to like facial de-aging and everything, or deep fakes and everything. It's like, we don't need that technology because like we have performers who can perform, like they can act like people.
I think that would have been a distraction.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. How did you feel about the visual style and everything? Obviously it's a very dark and grim movie. There are some very interesting set pieces that are terrifying and gruesome, but not gratuitously so, in my opinion. How did you feel about the kind of big scare moments of it, and and did it do justice to the original and the book?
As far as the visual style of Mike Flanagan, I feel like he does have a signature, but I think, and this is a big compliment that I fully intend, is that he reminds me a lot of David Fincher.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, David Fincher has a ton of texture to his visual style. He's very big on filters, and I haven't really read interviews with Mike Flanagan, but I feel like he uses some kind of filters on his cameras, and it transcends really well. It transfers very well. I feel like Gerald's Game really had kind of a red greenish filter on it that sort of took over the color palette in a really beautiful way. There's a lot of flashbacks in that movie and stuff like that, and that was used to great effect in that movie. Obviously, The Haunting of Hill House is very dark. It just has a very dark, like almost like a deep navy blue color tone to it, and I think The Shining felt red again. Had very red tones to it, which makes perfect sense with the giant wall of blood that the original movie is known for. And that stuff really just comes across great. He communicates that well. I mean, his visual style, I think he's really found it, and it was on full display in this movie. I loved it. I forgot what else you said. Sorry.
I know. I keep asking like 3 questions at once. I'm sorry. But to your point about that, like the color palette and the visual style, like the camera movements also, just like it is just a completely confident and just cocksure way, like to show, like to tell the story. It's so evocative. Like the scene with the baseball boy, and when they get to that abandoned place, just like the dark, misty environment of it is just so chilling, and just that type of set is just so effective, especially for what happens there.
Right, and he didn't like try to rip off Kubrick, like,
No,
you know,
not at
because
all.
Stanley Kubrick is so famous for his very static, wide lens shots.
Yes.
He's the master of it. I'm not sure anyone will ever top him in that regard.
Right.
But he didn't go for that. He used some wide shots and to good effect, but it wasn't a ripoff of Stanley Kubrick's visual style, which, as fantastic and as iconic as it was in The Shining, his movie, I'm so glad he didn't try to do that, because it would have been a distraction.
It would have been a distraction and a total cop out also.
Right.
And I think one of the complaints that I've heard is that people went in, and this is probably a fault on the marketing of the movie also, but people went into it not knowing the book, but like went into it expecting like, oh, it's a straight up Shining sequel. So like when the Overlook isn't even in the like conscious of the film until the last 30 minutes. Like that's kind of be a little discombobulating for some of the lay audiences, but I thought that was that restraint was really good. Granted, he has the roadmap of the book, but like when it gets to that point, we'll talk about it in spoilers, but when it gets to that point, that's when he starts like paying homage to Kubrick, but in a way that's like just not being showy about it. It's just bringing you back into it's a narrative technique. It's like he's bringing you back into the frame of mind of The Shining because Dan is being brought back into the frame of mind of The Shining.
Yes.
It's so again confident and cocksure.
Yes. And to get to your point where you mentioned kind of the scare parts of the film and some of the standout parts, you mentioned when they go and find when the True Knot finds the young boy in Iowa who they kill and take his steam. I've been like wanting to talk about this scene because it was so fucking brutal without being, you used a great word. You were like, it was brutal. That's just the term that I thought of as I was watching it, but it wasn't gratuitous.
Right.
It wasn't like Tarantino blood, but you still saw some blood. And huge freaking shout out to Jacob Tremblay.
Oh my God.
Who,
so good.
I mean, already has a ridiculous resume as a 13-year-old or whatever.
Right.
I mean, I thought they killed that kid. Like he crushed that performance. And everybody else all the other actors were so creepy. I mean, one of the most effective parts of that scene is the sound.
Yes.
You can hear the knife going into his body, and you see the pleasure on their faces, and you hear like the moans of pleasure as they're absorbing this kid's steam, his essence. It was like beautifully disgusting.
Yeah, that is a great way to describe it. Yes, beautifully disgusting. And it's also just like the language of the film, like it communicating to us that like, okay, pain evokes the steam like out of them, and that's what they're craving and everything. So as long as they keep him alive, like as long as he like they're drawing out his death to get more steam out of him, like that is just so disturbing, and that comes into play later in the movie a little bit as well.
Yes.
But like it's so well done. Also, I just found, I don't think I knew this, and I've seen the movie like 3 times now, but one of the guys in the stands at the baseball game, one of the ones talking, saying like, oh, hey, look at number 19. He knows where the pitch is going to come even before it comes or whatever. That conversation, one of those guys is Danny Lloyd, from the original The Shining.
No shit, I didn't know that.
Yep, I just saw that. That's pretty awesome.
That is awesome.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about kind of the Easter eggs and everything later, because there are some really great Dark Tower Easter eggs.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how did you feel about the kind of evolution of Dan Torrance from the beginning of the movie to the last act? How did you feel about his growth as a character and his journey throughout Dr. Sleep?
It was fantastic. I was so happy with what Stephen King did with Dan Torrance. Like I said in our review, I didn't know how much I wanted to know what happened to him until I started reading this book. And right off the bat, with the character in the book, we see him when he's at his worst, and he's become what you hoped he didn't become. You know, he's following the unfortunate path of his father. He's an alcoholic. He's down on his luck. He's basically a loser. And then he has this very haunting episode where he sleeps with this woman and steals her money, and her basically infant child almost gets exposed to their drugs. I mean, it's just it's a very horrific thing, and to see him achieve the sobriety that his dad never did just makes him so much more. As a fan, I was appreciative of that. You know, he finally brought redemption to the Torrance family, right? He broke the cycle, and that's because it's in the first book how Jack's father was horrifically abusive. Right. And unfortunately, Jack got to that level too in the book, and was trying to kill his family. And so to see Danny break the cycle so early on in the book, and just see him try to do something with his gift, I just really love what they did with the character. And are we going into spoilers right now?
Let's hold off on spoilers, and then I'll bring us into spoilers here in a second. Okay,
so I'll leave it there. But I mean, just the conclusion of his character is just amazing. But we'll get to that in spoilers.
Absolutely. Something that struck me about the movie when I rewatched it just this recent time is I'll bring that up. Well, let's go into spoilers, actually, because sorry. Let's go into spoilers for Dr. Sleep, the movie. I'm going to play a clip from the trailer. If you haven't seen Dr. Sleep, why are you listening to this? But if you haven't seen it, come back and listen to the spoiler section. And if you have seen it, just sit back and enjoy this clip from the trailer. When we come back, we're going to be spoiling Dr. Sleep.
Not many ride the bus this far north. You're running away from something?
I'm running away from myself, I guess.
Hi. You can hear me. You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic. I always called it the Shining. The world is a hungry place. A dangerous place.
These people, they hurt people like us.
These empty devils, they'll eat what shines. And they've noticed that little girl.
Well, hi there.
Get out of my head! Get out!
Okay, so into spoilers for Dr. Sleep. The thing that I want to bring up about Dan Torrance, and I do love how we get that opening of him, like it's him and like his rock bottom essentially. And something I didn't pick up on until this most recent rewatch was that when he's at the bar, he says, he mutters to him, to the guy he's about to fight. He says something like, "You're going to take your medicine." And I thought that was just exquisite. Like that was just perfect. But the time jump to, I think it's 8 years later, after Thanos has snapped everyone. No, I'm kidding. No, when we come back to like 8 years later, when he's like 8 years sober, and he's talking, he's at the AA meeting, and he's talking about his chip and everything. Something that I feel like is really introduces a very interesting complexity to the character and the family dynamic that carries over from The Shining is that he dedicates that chip to Jack Torrance. And he dedicates it to like his father, because his father couldn't get to that point. And that is such a complex kind of relationship to tie together, because Jack Torrance is crazy. Like, he tried to murder them and everything, and succumb to the Overlook and everything. And it's just, you see, I think that is one of the things that kind of pokes out the kind of tricky characterization of Kubrick's movie. It's kind of like, it shows that the error in that, I guess, because we don't get that redemption moment, which we'll talk about later for Dr. Sleep. But in the Shining movie, we don't get that redemption. But I love that internally for Dan, he has come to peace with the demon of his father in through his sobriety. And it's just, it's such a complex thing. And that's not taken to a point of too much. Like, it's not the focal point of the movie per se, but it is there enough to be important enough for the character. It's just such a fine line of characterization that I really loved about the movie. Yeah, absolutely.
And for people who didn't read the book and all they have for a picture of Jack Torrance is Jack Nicholson's performance in Stanley Kubrick's film, it's really, really unfortunate that that's all they have, because that is such an incomplete picture of who Jack Torrance really is and who he is in the books. And honestly, I bet people who've only seen the movie were kind of confused by that moment where he dedicates his sobriety chip to his dad, because Jack Nicholson was pretty horrific through that whole movie. He was never the loving Jack Torrance that we got in the book. And you know, in the book, Jack Torrance saves his son.
Right.
He holds off the hotel from taking his son long enough for his son to escape, and then the hotel blows up and he dies tragically, and he sacrifices himself. And that, people who have only seen the movie don't know that weight of him dedicating that chip to his dad. And it's really unfortunate. We've talked before about, I think last year we did our film review of The Shining, of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, and we both really talked about how we have to reconcile the fact that Stanley Kubrick kind of ruined Stephen King's vision of that book. But we both really like that movie. It's still a great movie, but it really was not true to the characters and the story. Absolutely. But visually and on so many other levels, it's just a remarkable film. So I feel bad kind of shitting on it, frankly, right here. But that's the drawback, and that's the beauty of being a complete fan and reading all these, experience all four stories of the Torrance family. And you know, this is the latest one, and I hope it's the last one. The way that it's all brought together, and that moment where he dedicates that sobriety chip to his dad is one of those just beautiful culminations of 40, 50 years of a story.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I talked about just the Shining, the way The Shining permeates, or the way that The Shining reflects Stephen King's growth and personal as a person over the years in a previous episode. But like, this is such an interesting culmination to that as well, even though like Mike Flanagan wrote it, but like, it's just cool to see like this important piece of Stephen King's like oeuvre pay off in such an incredibly well done movie. Like, it's satisfying to me that this story, this different iterations of this story, these characters and stuff have been like they've been handled throughout decades of storytelling through Stephen King's life, that Stephen King has added tidbits about his own life into each iteration. And now we have this, what I feel is a crowning achievement of a film, to kind of pay off everything that's come before it. And I just think that is like, like we said in the non-spoiler thing, it's a fucking magic trick. Like it is unbelievable. Like the achievement that was done with this.
And I just realized I misspoke. There's five stories of the Torrents because I kind of wrote off the miniseries.
Oh yeah.
I'm mad I did that because I actually think the miniseries has its merits and I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, I didn't even question.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, it's not like we've done episodes for each individual iteration either.
Right.
Oh God. Yeah. So the relationship between Abra and Dan as well, to kind of pivot to that. I agree completely with your assessment that she does a great job of showcasing that kind of torrency thing where it's very like she's angry. She has that anger in her and that aggression. And by the way, I guess we can spoil the novel, but I'll say that there's an element to the novel that I'm glad did not make it into the movie. And if you want to know the context of that, listen to the spoiler review for the book in our last episode. But yeah, I'm glad that wasn't incorporated, but there's still something there that maybe it's in this iteration of the story and this version of like this movie in the language of the movie. It's almost like the shining ability. I don't know if the shining ability necessarily awakens that. I think it's more just a naivete of a youth and like a youth with superpowers. Like she's going to be more emotional and everything, but I think it's communicated so well. Like when she has her conflict with, like that trap she sets for Rose the Hat, with the hand and everything, and like the glee that she has for that is just it's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. How did you feel about Abra and Dan?
It's great, and I love the parallel with the first book. The parallel of Dan and Dick Halloran, and now Dan as an adult guiding and helping Abra. You know, and that's displayed beautifully throughout the movie. Really well done in the movie and the book, obviously.
Yeah.
I'd say they're kind of. No, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say they're kind of on par for me.
Oh, wow.
But I honestly think Mike Flanagan did it better in the movie. The relationship between Abra and Dan, which it kind of culminates in the big spoiler at the end that we haven't mentioned yet. But anyways, the parallel between those two relationships, Dan and Dick, and then Dan and Abra, is really beautiful, and I think it's so satisfyingly mentioned when early on, sort of early on in the story, when Dan actually meets Dick Halloran's ghost for the first time.
Yeah.
And that just he sort of mentions how he owes a debt pretty much to The Shining, and he has to, you know, he needs to help this girl the same way that Dick helped him, and I just love the way that he embraces that responsibility, and it really gives him drive throughout the rest of the movie. And just that interaction was fucking cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that in the book that the interaction with young Danny and Dick in the book, that was one of your favorite parts in terms of the content and everything. Do you think that, because the story of Dick's grandfather and everything, obviously it's much toned down for the movie. Did you feel like it sold that history for Dick well, or did you find that lacking at all, or how did you respond to that scene?
I was fine with it. I mean, Mike Flanagan expanded so much more of this book that I was fine with him making edits where he had to, and I think that was fine because he was still true to the character and put it in the movie. But it wasn't as effective as the way Stephen King wrote it. That's one area where Stephen King, I think, excelled over Mike Flanagan, is that that part was so cool in the book and was just scary. And I love the way that it influenced Dick Halloran's character, you know, decades after he was originally written. I loved that. But the moment where Dan, as an adult, as a sober, and balanced and somewhat happy man actually gets to talk to Dick Halloran again. Like that was just, I really loved that. It was because, like I said, Dan has just been through hell. I mean, just absolute hell as a kid. And then as an adult, didn't know how to tackle his literal demons.
Yeah.
And just seeing the fact that Dick Halloran got to see him like that is just like the emotion of this final story was just through the roof for me personally. And I feel like it's totally justifiable because I mentioned in our book review last year, I read that book when I was 12 or 13. That was 20 years ago. Like I've been sitting with the Torrance family and been a fan of this universe, this story for more than half my life. And there's not a lot of stories that are like that for me. Like there's not a lot of stuff that spanned my entire life. But this is one of those things, and to see it done so well, there's just so many, all these little things are not little to me and to people who are big fans of this. I mean, I can't even imagine how people feel who read this novel back in 1978 when it was published. I don't even remember, 77.
I think 77. Yeah.
I mean, they've been sitting with it for 50 years, damn near. So yeah, it's such a deep story that all those little things really add up to something special.
Absolutely. And when watching the movie again, like that moment where adult Dan sees Dick Halloran in the hospice room, that vision of him, Ewan McGregor plays it like he's got this look of just like pure, genuine joy to see Dick Halloran. And I loved that. I thought that was just such a nice choice by Ewan McGregor in terms of playing that part. Also, we are technically a Dark Tower podcast. Dick Halloran says, "Cause a wheel."
He does. I
loved it so much. And I love it because, everything. But also, it's the same thing that happened with Gerald's game. Like Bruce Greenwood, Gerald in Gerald's game says, "All things serve the beam," and now Mike Flanagan's back with another direct reference to the Dark Tower series, and it's just there were so many moments throughout the movie that I just had just a shit-eating grin on my face, and that was one I was just like, I think I clapped in the theater. It was I love those little touches there.
I'm pretty sure I gasped.
Yeah, yep. And while we're kind of hovering around it, I probably could have saved this for after the review, but a couple other Dark Tower references. The bus has Tet transportation, and the abandoned like industrial area where they take the baseball boy has a sign for Lemerck Industries. Yep. And the stuffed or the balloon animal display and the bookend on the back on the backboard of Abra's bed looks like Ka, which I tweeted about when the movie came out, and confirmed that Mike Flanagan confirmed that was an intentional reference to Ka. So that's pretty cool.
Totally.
Yeah. So how did you feel about the depiction of the True Knot as a group? Because in the book, from my taste personally, the book, the True Knot are just really interesting villains because they are purely driven by their need to survive, and like I talked about this in the book review, but it's so cool to have like a group of villains that are doing just abhorrent, evil, like terrible things, but it's not for any other purpose other than to feed themselves. It's for sustenance, and it's such an interesting kind of thing to have in a book and in a story. So how did you feel about the depiction of the True Knot in the movie?
It was good. I think King did a little better in the book. I feel like the True Knot had more detail in the book. I love the part in the book where Stephen King is talking about how they're like this nomadic kind of tribe, and they do so well they're so good at blending in as just these kind of bland RV people, sort of, and that was sort of skipped over or passed over in the movie, and that was perfectly fine. I didn't have an issue with that. One thing I did appreciate though was the chemistry between Rebecca Ferguson and Zahn McClarnon, who we didn't mention, but he played Crow Daddy.
Crow Daddy.
I thought they had really good chemistry, and the sympathy and the empathy that we both mentioned that you have with the True Knot, I think was really exemplified well in their chemistry. Like, you feel like they really love each other, and they're not just being greedy by going after steam. They want to see each other survive. Like, they care for each other, and that's a very human quality and a very universal quality. And so there were some important interactions between the two of them that really drove that point home really well. So, and then just like we talked about when they killed the boy in the Lamerck Industries so awesome. Abandoned warehouse and stuff like that. That was amazing. And it's sort of the precursor to that, where they kind of stalk that young girl by the side of the lake, was the whole stalking aspect of that was very creepy. I liked that. That was Rebecca Ferguson nailed that part.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it was, and I think the actress who played Snakebite Andy, Emily Allen Lind, she did a great job too. I liked her. I liked her role, but
Me too.
She was a little bit more prominent of a character in the book.
Yeah, she was in the book. She was kind of an audience surrogate for the True Knot, and in the movie, she's kind of just brought in. She's kind of just brought in. She doesn't really serve that much of a purpose in the movie, except to be just an introduction to the True Knot themselves.
Right, exactly.
I'm fine with, but yeah.
Yeah, I was perfectly happy with what Mike Flanagan did with the True Knot.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. Just the depiction of it, like you said, the scene at the beginning, that opening scene with Rose the Hat and Violet is the girl's name. It's super just creepy and unsettling, and I love that it's so like it's so like, she takes a flower and she eats it, and like the girl's like, "Oh, you're not supposed to eat flowers," and it's like she's literally eating like Violet, like she's eating like she's eating like that's it's it's a little bit of foreshadowing, I guess, but
right.
But yeah, I love the way that the True Knot is depicted throughout the movie. It juggles so much between the True Knot, between Abra, Dan's story, all that, and it's done so well. And I feel like it's a really greatly paced movie. With the conflict with the True Knot and everything, like, first of all, I'll talk about this, and then we can go into the shining aspects of it as well, and the Overlook. But Cliff Curtis, his character as Billy, I love. We talked about him in non-spoilers, but I love him as, just like you said, a character actor, and he does such a great job of playing this sympathetic, empathetic person toward Dan. And he is like, he's basically like, I mean, he's his sponsor essentially, but I love the just genuine care that goes into their relationship. I think both actors played off it really well. So much so that when we get to the very cool action set piece, the kind of like the all out, like the gun battle in the woods, like that, like, first of all, that as a scene is really effective and cool, but just the ending where Snakebite Andy, as she's dying, tells him to kill himself, and he does it, is like, it rips my heart out. Also,
yes,
not to throw shade, but I love that this movie is able to do what the Dark Tower movie tried to do with The Man in Black, but they actually did it in a very good way.
Right.
Like, it's so, like, because we ripped on the movie, The Dark Tower, for doing like the stop breathing and hate thing. And like,
Yes.
it's literally the exact same thing. Like, it is the exact same thing in this, and it is to so much better effect. I can't explain it, but it's like, it's so, I don't know. I just thought that was really funny.
It's that wow factor that you can't quantify. It's skill. It's just skill as a filmmaker, and everybody, the editors, the writer, it's just. I think there was a lot more talent involved with this movie, frankly.
Absolutely.
So I think that's it. That was the intangible factor that made it work in this movie, and it didn't in the other one.
Yeah.
But I love that part too. It felt very. This is another maybe strange comparison, but it felt very Joss Whedon, because that's what Joss Whedon likes to do. He'll make you fall in love with these characters, and then he'll pick one. He'll just kill them off at the drop of a hat.
Right.
I don't mind spoiling Avengers, because that was 12 years ago or whatever. Like when Agent Coulson, when he dies in the first Avengers movie, like he just rips your heart out, like you said. And that's how that scene felt, and it's just so effective.
Absolutely. And like, there's a narrative necessity to it, because it frees the plot up for Dan and Abra to go to the Overlook and everything without Billy being there. But it doesn't feel like it's a plot necessity. It feels like it's just it is an organic element of the story. Also, that's a kind of 1-2 punch with him dying, and then like the reveal that Crow Daddy killed Abra's dad as he's taking her out of the house. It's just like, it's such a cool like sequence to bring us into this next section of the movie. And before we get to the Overlook stuff, I do want to talk about just the incredible scene where Abra's in the backseat of the car, and Crow Daddy is driving her to Rose the Hat, and just like that scene is so great. Like Kylie Curran, when like the performance that she gives when Dan kind of possesses her and kind of talks to Crow Daddy, like the way that she switches up her performance and performs as Ewan McGregor as Dan, but it's still her, just is so, like, it is so cool. Like, I think that it's one of the standout moments of the movie, from an acting standpoint, because she just knocked it out of the park. Yeah. How did you feel about that?
Yes, I was going to mention earlier when I was talking about her performance, that's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie, and probably my favorite part of her performance. I didn't bring it up because it's a spoiler, so I had to wait till now. But yeah, one of my favorite parts of the movie. So cool.
Oh, absolutely. And also the writing, like just like her laughing and just being like, oh, arrogance, you think you live forever, so you don't need to worry about like wearing your seatbelt, and then boom, it's just, it's so good. And also just like that is obviously a pivoting moment for the story, because it transitions us over to going to the Overlook in the final half hour of the movie. But it's also like, that's the end of the True Knot. Like they're gone. Like Rose the Hat is just about the only person left, of at least that tribe of the True Knot. And like, it becomes this thing of like, she's out for revenge. She's out for vengeance. And like, it just sets the stage in a very unique way for the end of the movie. And then we get, we get Dan and Abra going to the Overlook. So yeah, should we talk about that?
Yes, I think we need to get to the climax here.
We do. So first of all, just the scene that establishes that phase of the movie, that act of the movie, the replica of the opening scene of The Shining, with the score and everything, and like the helicopter shot over the water by the mountains, just like another shit-eating grin on my face.
Yes, me too.
Loved it. And then when they get to the Overlook, and he's just like, you gotta wait out here, I've got to wake it up, and like, I just, oh god, it was so satisfying. How did you feel about the end game of the movie?
It was so cool. It's I hate to say it, but it's so much cooler than the book.
Yeah.
'Cause, you know, in the book, the hotel is gone, and
Right.
it feels like it doesn't feel the same. And the imagery that Stanley Kubrick achieved with his film is so iconic, and it still permeates modern pop culture.
Yep.
And it had to be in the movie. You could not make this movie without Stanley Kubrick's Overlook Hotel. You just couldn't do it. And I was just so happy with the way he incorporated it into the movie, and to be back there again visually. They nailed it. I mean, it was pretty much perfect. You know,
Absolutely.
They got all the details right. Yeah, but just in some of the fun, almost like action one-liners when he's like, "You stay here, I've got to wake it up," like you just mentioned. I just like that's such a fun line.
Oh yeah,
just,
and I think
it's so cool.
He says "wakey, wakey" when he turns the lights on.
Right,
it's like
it was Arnold Schwarzenegger in T4 walking through there. You know,
so good. It's just the imagery of it, just the iconography replicated in this new movie is so perfect and well done. And then we get the special treat of the Gold Room, I think, or the Colorado Lounge. I don't know. Anyway, the bar scene, with Henry Thomas playing Jack Torrance. I love that so much. How did you feel about that interaction in the movie?
I think my favorite part of it is that, Henry Thomas, not a person that I would have predicted to emulate Jack Nicholson so well.
Right. Yeah.
But he did a great job, and it wasn't like an impression that like makes you laugh, but you had no doubt in your, like, he did a great job emulating that character so well. But I think my favorite part of it is the fact that Jack Torrance is gone. He is gone. Like, the hotel has completely eliminated any redeeming characteristic that he had in the book. And he's just completely been gone. He's the loving father, might as well have never existed. Like, that's how far gone he is, and is exemplified so beautifully in that dialogue scene. He is just so aggressive and so icky, like with these horrible things he's saying to his son, and it's like he doesn't care that it's his son. He's just this entity that's been taken over by this hotel, and it's absolutely tragic, and you can see it pouring off of Ewan McGregor's face. But he's also, he's been here before, and he experienced it as a 4-year-old kid. He can handle it now as a stable adult, and just the fact that it's absolutely heartbreaking that he can't have a moment with his dad again. It's because his dad is just gone. Yeah. And the hotel just mocks him by doing that to him, and it's just brutal. Like, it just, man, I would, if that were me, like if I were Danny Torrance, I would have melted into a puddle on the floor in that moment. And just the fact that he perseveres through it and does what he does, God, I just really love that scene. One of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah, same here. And I mentioned, like, the beginning of the movie is kind of Dan's rock bottom in his alcoholism, but like this is like his emotional, like, rock bottom moment.
Yes.
And it's just it's such a great scene. And then to kind of move along the kind of climactic showdown with him and Rose the Hat. I love the use of the maze and the kind of the confidence that she has, but then the reveal that she, like, the kind of fight between them was really well done.
Oh yeah.
and the culmination of it with the trunks, and just that great freaking line from Dan saying that they're not hiding or whatever, they're hungry or they're starving.
They're starving. Oh, I love that line.
So good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And again, another very effectively brutal scene where she's effectively consumed.
Mm-hmm. And before
I love that.
Same here. Oh, same here. It's so satisfying, and it's such a great payoff. And then before that, like the kind of calling back to kind of like taking the steam out of someone as they're being injured and dying. Like Dan is like fatally wounded, and like the steam is coming out of him and stuff. It's just like that. It just brings the tension to such a heightened point, that you almost feel like that's the end. But then we get the fucking magic trick.
Yes.
Oh my God. So going to room 237, and we get the moment, oh my God. The moment where Dan is being overtaken by the Overlook, and we get like, oh my God, I still can't believe that he pulled this off. Like I
know.
can't believe it's unreal, but we get the perfect marriage of Kubrick's movie and King's novel from 1977. We get this perfect meld where it's in the Overlook as Stanley Kubrick envisioned it and created it, but it is paying homage to that original novel in having Dan be the one to come back and get her to get out of there, and then him taking on the role of Jack Torrance from the novel to overload the boiler and blow up the hotel. Like, holy fuck, man.
I know. So brilliant.
Unreal. Like it is one of the most satisfying movie moments I've maybe ever had. Like,
yes.
It's really mind-blowing that like I can still feel this way when we have the portals scene from the Avengers Endgame, and we have like so much other stuff going on, but like this is such a unique meld of it's such a cool moment to end the movie on. It's so great.
It is one of the best examples of fan service that I can think of.
Yeah, and like true fan service. Like,
yes,
like I said earlier in the episode, like it's fan service from a fan perspective. Like it's someone who clearly has a deep admiration and love for this work and for this person's body of work, and it's just it's just perfect. It's just perfect.
It really is.
Yeah. And like I don't even mind, because like the book, I love the way the book ends as well, because the book has him confronting his demons of like the woman and the kid that he left behind, that he stole the money from and everything like that. The big defining moment for his character in the book is coming to terms with that and revealing that to his AA group and everything. That's his big moment. But here it's just like him taking up like destroying the Overlook and saving Abra and sacrificing himself for better or worse. It's so satisfying. And we get the recursion of Wendy in the scene. I think he kind of transforms into young Danny before it blows up, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that was, oh God, I could not possibly love it more.
Absolutely.
I was crying my eyes out. Like I was kind of sobbing a little bit.
Nice.
By the time he got to the boiler room and his mother was there, God, that was just so beautiful. And I sort of see that moment as it's kind of the culmination or the it's really the comeuppance of Dan, but it's really. It's so significant for the character of Wendy too, because like I mentioned in Stanley Kubrick's movie, she is not done justice at all, and none of the characters are in that movie, and it's really a shame because Wendy is such a critical character in the book, the original The Shining, and I think the miniseries did a good job with her, and Rebecca De Mornay in that performance did a good job, and that was so fun to see. But just seeing Wendy reunited with her son again, and getting to see him in his best moment was super great. And it's, I just love how that the moment of Dan holding off the hotel from consuming Abra the way that Jack Torrance did with his son in the book was just so amazing. And like, it's another one of those things where it's like it's really for the fans who have experienced all aspects of this story, because the iconography of The Shining is Stanley Kubrick's movie. Yeah. Right. And we've all kind of had to accept that. And some of us like it, some of us don't. Yeah. We've talked about it before.
King even did. Like King even accepted it.
Right. But I'm sure other big fans who have experienced it the way that you and I have also talked about it somewhat, or at least thought about it. And that moment can't exist in Stanley Kubrick's Shining.
Right.
And so the way that Mike Flanagan brought it into the universe was just absolutely beautiful. And it means so much to people like us, and it can finally be part of pop culture. If unfortunately this movie wasn't as popular as that, as The Shining, it's really a shame. But
I feel like there's going to be a cult following for this movie. Like, I feel like it's going to get its due.
I really hope it does. Yeah. Because that moment is it's just perfection, really.
It is. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And the kind of denouement of the movie is the reveal that, Dan's dead, but he's visiting Abra and everything. That's a
and that was just sweet. That was a very sweet moment.
Oh, yeah. It's a very nice bow to put on the movie. And I love the moment where she tells her mom, she's just like, we go on. Like, we go on. And I think she says some reassuring words about her dad. And it's a nice just end cap to the movie and this storyline thread that spanned decades. So yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Is that it? We did it.
It is. It is. Yeah. I was so looking forward to talking about this movie because
yeah. And man, we've taken our sweet time with it.
We have.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our Dr. Sleep series. That's our Shining Dr. Sleep series of reviews. We did it. We can go on to something else now. Super excited about that. Yeah, so that's our review. That'll do it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Coming up on the podcast, I did have a great chat with our friend Mike, who you hear on the outro, the pre-recorded outro every week on the podcast, or every episode on the podcast. We talked about 11/22/63 and his relationship with Stephen King and everything. So that'll come up after this episode at some point in a week or so. And then after that, I don't know. Tiny, do you want us to dive into what's it called? Castle Rock season 2? Am I putting you on the spot?
You're kind of putting me on the spot because I still haven't watched it. I wasn't feeling it after like 2 episodes.
Okay. Well, I think what we could probably do is do like we did before, like just 2 episodes, talk about the 2 episodes, like group them into 2 episodes. So, yeah. We'll talk off mic.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, that'll do. Any parting thoughts on Dr. Sleep, on Mike Flanagan, on anything else? Any parting thoughts?
I can't wait to see what he does next. And I didn't mention it at the end, but I feel like I hope this is the end for the Shining universe. Yeah. Like, I think this should be the last entry. Like, I don't want Stephen King to write another book. I don't want somebody to make another movie. Yeah. I don't even know if I want like some spin-off where someone else is fighting the True Knot in Europe or something. Like, let's just let it be. Like, this was so perfect. I hope it stays this way.
I agree completely, and I totally forgot to bring this up on the news section of the podcast.
Oh boy.
So there was news like a couple weeks ago, I think. I'm going to need to dig it up, but HBO Max, which is coming out next month, May 27th, the new streaming services, it's going to be like kind of Warner Brothers whole catalog as well as HBO's stuff. Can you guys tell that I'm stalling because I'm trying to find it here? But yeah, there was news that basically here we go. Wow, I almost timed that pretty well. So there's news that there's going to be an Overlook show. Let's see. So basically there was a like TV movie that was made or in production that I think Glenn Mazzara had a role in. Like I think he wrote the script. But then that kind of got shuttered and it didn't go through or anything. But according to the Hollywood Reporter from April 16th, Overlook, sources say, is a 10-episode drama that has also opened a mini writer's room. So let's see. J.J. Abrams has set his first 3 series at HBO Max. Warner Brothers' forthcoming streaming service has handed out straight to series orders. Holy shit. Straight to series orders for Duster and the Shining offshoot Overlook, and what is described as a DC thing. So, I don't know much. There's not much information, but it goes on to say that Overlook, a spinoff of sorts based on the iconic hotel featured in Stephen King's 1977 novel and subsequent 1980 feature, features characters from the horror thriller. It explores the untold, terrifying stories of the most famous haunted hotel in American fiction. And this also, holy shit. The project reunites Bad Robot, King, and Warner Brothers TV following the Hulu anthology Castle Rock. The 10-episode drama, sources say, is being written and executive produced by Dustin Thomason and Scott Brown, who previously worked on Castle Rock. Yes, so the series has, per sources, also opened a mini writer's room to get a jump on scripts during the industry-wide production shutdown. So, to kind of end the episode, I should have brought this up before, but I would have probably just gloated and been so excited, but I think this is the dream. This is what I wanted. I hope like hell that this is going to be like Castle Rock and that it is a season story anthology series. Like each season tells a story that is independent from the previous season and just charts history throughout the Overlook. How do you feel about this news? What do you think about it and everything? And yeah.
I can't be entirely against it. It sounds pretty cool, even though I made that very definitive statement a moment ago. Right. But I think really I'm just done with. I'm so happy with the Torrance family. Like I'm so happy with where they ended up. You know, I don't want any more with them. Like if they want to come back to this universe, I would completely understand. And I think the concept of the Shine is not going to go anywhere. I think that's going to continue to be adapted in other stories, and Stephen King might even write about it again or have another character who has it again. And I think that's fine. And this sounds pretty cool. So
I'm excited for it.
Nice.
It doesn't look like we're going to get any more seasons of Castle Rock, so I'm hoping that this just carries on that legacy. So, on that note, that'll do it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like I said, we're going to have an episode about 11/22/63 coming up, and then I think I'm going to try to twist Tiny's arm into doing our review series on Castle Rock. We'll see. But, thank you guys for listening. Check out the Obsessive Viewer and Anthology, which I just recently relaunched. Any parting thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening once again, and long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy.
Sweet.
So I'm so excited. And by the way, just gonna throw this out there right now. If you're looking for something to watch, and you have 25 minutes to kill, go watch season 2 of The Twilight Zone, episode 29, The Obsolete Man.
Okay.
Like, you remember how excited I was about the monsters they're doing on Maple Street?
Yes.
I am very much restraining myself from showing that excitement because I want you to watch The Obsolete Man.
Okay.
It's phenomenal. Like, it's like, I won't say much about it, but what I will say is that in terms of like the set design, the writing, and like probably most importantly, or the one that I'll highlight, is the acting, because it's Burgess Meredith and Fritz Weaver, just like going head to head like it's basically like a two-hander between them, and they're both just it is amazing acting.
Nice. I'm downloading it right now on my phone.
Sweet. Nice. And then the other 28 episodes of season 2, and then the 35 episodes of season 1.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to towerjunkiespod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/towerjunkiespod and follow us on Twitter at towerjunkiespod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at towerjunkiespod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at tpublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktober.irvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!